in 2 hours at 8 o'clock, President Cyril Ramaphosa expected to address the nation on the national state of disaster. The presidency saying that this is about our response to COVID-19, those old family meetings as he called them. SABC News' political editor Mzwandile Mbeje is at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. He joins us now. Mzwai, thank you. What do we expect to hear?
Well, good evening to you, Francis and Bongiwe. Well, it's been some time since the president spoke to us, and I think he last spoke to us as the nation on the 28th of November last year. So clearly, he hasn't updated us. Of course, the statement kept coming, updating us about what has happened. In fact, I remember, Francis, that we were expecting his address as we were going into the holiday season in December. But he then took ill when he contracted COVID, and then he had to then rest and recuperate. So since then, he hasn't. But the country has been continuing to manage the spread of COVID, and I mean, I should say there's been great progress. If you look at the number of deaths, it's really gone down. And the number of infections, same thing, it's really gone down. So clearly, you do see that there's a need for the economic activity to start thriving. So we think that this address tonight, Francis, will basically be about how we manage the state of disaster, which is the one that has mandated us to wear masks. But we are still aware that the risks aren't out completely. In fact, last month, the government had issued a statement to say the state of disaster had been extended for the last time, but we saw last week being extended again to April, so which basically told you that the government was being cautious in how it's handling this. Currently, we have about 30 million people who are vaccinated, 33 million, in fact, in terms of the number who are vaccinated, so which represents, in terms of the population, I think it's about 30%. So not enough, but the number is good enough, and I guess the fact that not a lot is happening in terms of deaths, so does give a government perhaps some hope that it could reopen further. So that's what we're expecting to hear from the president tonight, Francis.
Mzwandile, government has been criticised for the fact that we're still in a state of disaster, given the very low numbers, the death toll almost non-existent, and we have other diseases in this country. There's been accusations of a power grab, reportedly some talk amongst ministers about the fact that government won't be able to impose curfews if we're not in a state of disaster, won't be able to suspend the sales of alcohol, but a societal debate. Should government be doing that in the first place or want to do that continuously? Do you think he'll address some of those concerns and that criticism?
Certainly, because this state of disaster is the one that has been enabling all these measures to be in place. In fact, the president himself, including the Minister of Health, have hinted in the past that they are looking at measures that will still make it possible for, I think, people to wear masks, and perhaps in some targeted areas. I know that perhaps now the risk is a bit low, but there are instances where you still have to wear masks because the spread can simply occur immediately. In fact, we know that I think a couple of weeks ago in China, so there was a surge, and then we saw the country go into lockdown for about 30 million people. And I think that's exactly why the government perhaps decided to be very cautious in how it's going about. When perhaps it decides to replace the state of disaster, I can tell you that there would be those measures which have been worked out, which would be acceptable to the South African public, so that you don't become reckless. Yes, the numbers are down, but the fact of the matter is that we are not out of the woods yet. So what do? So you have to tread carefully. You have to be very careful in how you move with the issue of lifting restrictions at the same time, because you need to get the economy back into working. A number of people lost work, and then it's about time that those people get work. In fact, the conditions in the world right now require that perhaps people do get back to work. I mean, what is happening in Russia and Ukraine also is putting a strain on us. Look at the prices of the oil, and in the next few days or even months or weeks, so we are likely to see food prices going up. So clearly, if a lot of people are not working, this will even put further strain. And I think this is what has informed government and the president in convening this so-called family meeting, the address to the nation, perhaps to lay out those measures, so how he plans to fight COVID, but at the same time make sure that the economy is reopened.
All right, let's see what the president has to say, possibly talking about those legal measures to move away from the state of disaster and do what you say, still put a buffer in place, in a sense, for the future. And let's not forget that there's actually a new variant abroad. Let's see if he mentions that as well. Thank you very much. And you'll be following SABC News' political editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, live from the Union Buildings.